and welcome to the channel. My name is Kubeir. I'm a CICC licensed immigration consultant, and I love doing this every week in, week out, because hey, that's what we live for, right? And sometimes, not every one of us, but some of us. Canadian immigration, such an interesting subject. This is every content creator's dream come true. Every single day, there's something new happening. Can we please just mute that, whatever is happening there? Incredible, amazing. Sometimes we get to hear some good stuff. Sometimes we get to hear some not very good stuff. As of right now, we have more not so good stuff coming through versus the good stuff coming through. Of course, we are all anxiously waiting for one of those days when we have a barge of good stuff coming through, but not to be at this point of time. The main subject for today's episode also has to do with the things which are not so good, because most of you already know by now that Canadian immigration, obviously one of the most desired immigration countries or destinations in the world, supposedly to have one of the most easiest processes and programs that helps people to immigrate to this country. But in the recent past, obviously, the whole imbalance between the temporary residents and permanent residents not matching, not being balanced out, has created a big issue. We now have more than 27 lakhs or 28 lakhs or 2.7 million, 2.6 million. I think it's closer to 3 million or 30 lakh people who are currently in Canada as temporary residents and now not being able to find a pathway to regularize their status, to become permanent residents and eventually Canadian citizens. We'll talk to you more in detail with regards to the PNP programs that are considered to be an alternative route. I mean, of course, all of us know that express entry is the most desired route to get to immigrate. And for a lot of people who do not understand, express entry is not a program by itself. It's just a system. It's just like a tool, like a CRM, if you would want to call it, with 3 programs that are in the express entry, being federal skilled worker, federal skilled worker, Canadian experience class, and federal skilled trade categories. When you are not able to get through with the express entry because the scores, you all know, are extremely high and there hasn't been a draw, and it's only worrying me to think what the next draw and the scores are going to be like, but more about that later. So the alternative routes usually is the PNP programs, because the provinces tend to nominate those candidates who are there in that province based on their occupation, based on their education, based on their connection to the province. They tend to choose them depending on different factors. And therefore, a lot of people do resort to or depend on those PNP programs. But we are only in the month of May this year, only May. This is the first 5 months of the year. And the year started with lots of, I wouldn't say negative news, but it sort of started as a damp, it was quite damp squib, if you want to call that, and then has stayed in that manner, rather getting damper by the day. All of that as we move forward, but let's start with this weekly roundup. This is the Canadian Immigration Weekly Roundup. Stay up to date on the Canadian immigration news and trends with us on TikTok. For some reason, we are there. Instagram, of course, Facebook, Twitter, or X, as you would like to call it now, and of course on YouTube. Topics for discussion today will be the PNPs and the updates, of course, if the draws are there. I don't think there were too many draws this week, were there? I think only one. One. Okay. We'll talk about express entry tiny bit, and of course there is some other news that we want to bring to you and explain what's happening on the other 4 fronts as well. And then we will get to the question and answers. Please hold your questions until we get to that stage so that I don't lose out on some of your valuable questions. Starting with the PNP draws, British Columbia, our regular and the usual suspect, continued to conduct their draws, though the number of invitations has really gone down. They invited 77 candidates through the skilled worker and the international graduate stream of British Columbia PNP programs. They had a childcare draw with a cutoff score of a very high 90. Now, can you imagine, not so long back, the childcare draws was only at 60. This has now gone to 90. Trust me, it's not very nice. And then the construction draws cutoff is at 93. The healthcare draw cutoff score is at 100. Tech draw, now tech draw is at 120. Imagine there used to be the times when we had 80s, 85s, and 90s, but now it's at 120. The veterinary care draw cutoff is at 80, still manageable, but comparatively, all of them are quite high. What's happening at the express entry front? Let's take a look at it. Nothing much is happening at the express entry front. That's what's happening. The French language proficiency will continue to dominate. Now, this is basically an excerpt from the ATIP that was shared by Carry Immigration, Nile Carry of Carry Immigration. We did a complete detailed video on this one, I think about 2 weeks back. So if you really are interested in knowing the breakdowns of different categories that would be invited this year under the category-based draws, then take a look at that video. It will give you a bit of an insight as to what's happening there. But there was one small portion, and I don't see if I have it here, and let me see if I can pull that up. And there was a very small portion in those ATIP notes where IRCC, through this, I mean, it's basically internal communication, and then they mentioned there that they would want to keep these draws more regular. They would want to keep these draws consistent. And then with the fact that there was no draw in the last few weeks, actually now, there has been no draw, and then it makes you wonder whatever happened to the fact that they wanted to keep it consistent and therefore maintain the program integrity and the client confidence. I'm not sure what happened to that. I was just trying to look for the excerpts, can't find it. Where did we go on that? Let's see if I can find it here. Nope, can't find it. All right. But if you get to that video, you will see what I'm talking about in terms of the ATIP notes, where IRCC very candidly mentioned that they would like to keep these draws consistent. Now, obviously, we were expecting a draw a couple of weeks back. Didn't happen. Last week, or rather this week, we were expecting a draw last week. Didn't happen. This week didn't happen. Of course, now all eyes are on for next week. Fingers are crossed. Hopefully, there'll be a draw next week. What is the reason for the draw not happening in express entry? I honestly don't know. I wish I knew. I don't know. Lot of permutations and combinations. A lot of people are thinking different things. I personally do not know if there is anything happening over there. Of course, there is a new category that we are now looking at, and that is primarily have to do with the region-based category. Now, I did another video on that as well. If you want to take a look, just give it a peek there. We talked about it last week as well. IRCC would now like to, or rather is already testing on conducting region-based draws. Now, how these region-based draws will be implemented, again, we don't know. There is no clarity on it yet. But one step in that direction was when IRCC chose to make it mandatory for you to include your Canadian postal codes, especially if you're residing in Canada, or where your employers are and their postal codes. And it's a step in that direction where they may, at some point of time, start conducting region-based category draws. Now, as I said, there is no further information as to how that would be implemented. But yeah, let's see how that goes. Of course, I think there would be a great emphasis on the rural areas. So probably, as you know, with most PNP programs, you get more points, you get more advantage if you are if you're in the areas which are further away from the main urban centers. So if you're away from Toronto, you're away from Calgary, Edmonton, you're away from Montreal, you're away from Vancouver, you're away from Winnipeg, you probably are going to get more advantage. So this is also probably enriched in the same direction that this region-based category draws will go. But again, as of right now, we do not have too much of information on that. So we can only speculate, right? That's what we love doing on most days. But yes, that's what's happening with express entry. The categories. Now, again, just to give you a very brief summary of how the categories are looking like. French proficiencies will take 30% of the invitations that will be conducted this year through the category-based draws. Healthcare occupations will get 15%. STEM occupations will get 25%. Trade taking 5%. Transport taking 3%. And agriculture having to do with 0.5%. That leaves only 21.5% for the general draws, for the general category draws. It would be interesting to see how that pans out. So far, it seems IRCC has pretty much maintained that ratio, with the general draws being quite tepid, not too many there. Each week we are only seeing about 2000, 1500, 2000, 1500, 2000 kind of a draw. But this gap that has now happened, this is only going to make it a bit more tricky as we go forward, because what you can anticipate from here on, and I'm sure you'll all agree with that, is that the next draw, whenever it happens, is going to be with a higher score. Again, what it depends on is the number of invitations that will be issued. So by now, I'm sure all of you know, the more the number of invitations, the lower the score. The less the number of invitations, the higher the score. Plus, then the gap. So this gap, and all depends on the number of invitations. I'm hoping that at least, if nothing else, at least to maintain the balance and the integrity of what they're talking about, they add to the number of invitations. So at least we can see a drop rather than an increase. But again, I guess next week will tell us how that fares out or pans out. What else have we got? We have other news. Okay, in the other news, now by now this is again something which you already know, because it is doing round on TikTok and on Instagram and on YouTube, of course. A lot of it is misinformation. So what has happened is, there were student protests, peaceful protests in Manitoba, where the international students whose work permits were expiring expressed their concern to the immigration minister in Manitoba, saying that, these guys are waiting for their, so they're already into the pool, they're already into the Manitoba pool. Some of them are already invited, but because of the lengthy delays of the immigration process or the PNP process in Manitoba, they were stuck. Now their work permits have expired or are expiring. Manitoba is not completing their processing, and therefore they wanted some sort of a reprieve or relief. The immigration minister of Manitoba then obviously had a detailed discussion with the immigration minister of Canada, Mark Miller, and Mark Miller then agreed to extend the work permits of 6,700 candidates in Manitoba who obviously had their applications in the pool or in the process. Now, these people will get the extension. But the rounds that are doing on all these social media channels is that IRCC is extending blanket approval for postgraduate work permits. No, that is not happening. Yes, we would like to see that. And yes, Mark Miller has been coming out with different advisories. And the latest one said that very big changes are anticipated lots of big changes are anticipated with the postgraduate work permits. And one of the biggest change that has been indicated is that the postgraduate work permits and their validity may be tied in with the kind of industry that you are working in, or with the kind of education that you have gained in Canada. So whatever you have studied, the field of education, that line of studies is going to make a big impact on how long or what the duration of your work permit is going to be. Some occupation or some industry lobbies have advocated for 5 years of work permit for people who are probably within the healthcare and trade categories. So Mark Miller has shown interest, has only exchanged encouraging words, has said that provide us with the data and then we are willing to consider. As of right now, there is absolutely no information and there is no confirmation to state that the work permits are going to be for 5 years. No, nothing, nada, niet, nothing of that sort happening. As of right now, the work permits are still the same. There is no changes to it. But yes, in future, again, we do not know how far or how distant or how near that future is. You can absolutely anticipate that the changes will come for the postgraduate work permits. Now, they could be shorter in duration. For some programs, they could be wiped out completely. And in some cases, you may just get longer duration of work permits. Now, one of the reasons why it has been indicated is that over the last few years, the majority of international students who came to Canada studied business and marketing. And therefore, since that field of education does not yield to jobs or people gaining any meaningful employment in Canada, therefore, they are now finding themselves in a situation where they cannot really pursue something which is considered as a priority occupation, therefore resulting in this big imbalance that we have now and this huge crisis that we are facing with regards to the number of temporary residents in Canada and the permanent resident quotas. So yeah, this was a bit of an insight as to what exactly happened in Manitoba and with regards to the extension of the work permits or some of the work permits for people in Manitoba. What else was there? Okay, moving forward, IRCC will not renew temporary off-campus work hours measure. Now, this was again an old news. I'm sure most of you already know. This is to do with the 20 hours per week. Now, international students, they already know by now that you can work you can work, you could work full time until 30th of April. Okay, on campus, off campus did not matter. Then from 1st of May onwards, that has now been changed to 24 hours per week. So you can work 24 hours per week, but not from 1st of May. Sorry, the change has been announced on 1st of May. It will be effective 1st of September. Starting 1st of September, international students in Canada will be allowed to work 24 hours per week off campus. In the meantime, as of right now, international students, if you are studying full-time, if you are in compliance with your study permit conditions, then as of right now, you can study only 20 hours per week. But if you are on your schedule break at this point of time, then you may work full-time. All right. So please be aware of these conditions, and you will not be in trouble. So this was another off-campus temporary policy that was changed. Now, temporary work hours and protests that are happening. I'm not sure how many of you are aware, but after, or rather I would say inspired, or I do not know whether it was triggered by what has happened in Manitoba. And I just explained to you what happened in Manitoba, that the international students whose work permits were expiring and who were in the process, not only international students, rather any work permit holder who was in the process of having applied for Manitoba PNP, when they realized that their work permits were expiring and their PNP programs, the PNP processing was not happening, they expressed their concern and they were able to get that. Now, whether it was triggered from that or whether it is inspired from that, I don't know. But Charlottetown in Prince Edward Islands, international students and foreign workers or open work permit holders or closed work permit holders whose work permits are expiring have also been protesting. And the recent report came and said that they are willing to go on a hunger strike if their demands are not met. And the demands basically are that extend their work permits, provide them with pathways for permanent residence. Now, I'm not sure how viable those are, but these are some of the images on your screen right now this is the Immigration Minister of Prince Edward Islands who is meeting them, Minister King there, and then some other, they need fair PNP draws. I think PNP draws are quite fair. If you see one of those placards, that's what it says. They need fair PNP draws. Now, the point here is, are these protests fair? I mean, yes, of course, expressing your desire, expressing your concerns, yes, makes sense. But this protests, I'm not sure how, because it is not being interpreted very, very positively by Canadian citizens and other residents in Canada. You're here in Canada as a temporary resident. It's understood. At no point of time was there any guarantee that you will become PR, and that has been said by Sean Fraser, Mark Miller, time and again. Now, I can understand that you as an international student, you as a worker in Canada, come to Canada realizing that there is a possible pathway towards permanent residence. But all provinces on their website say very clearly that even if you get invited, there is no guarantee that we will nominate you. That's what they said. Now, Prince Edward Islands is one of the smallest, not one of the smallest province in Canada. And their nomination quota also is quite small. It's not a lot. I think it's about 1,200, if I'm not mistaken. And you can imagine when the PR pathways were basically dwindling away, a lot of people decided to move to provinces in Atlantic region, because provinces in Atlantic region were known to have options for permanent residence. Pathways for permanent residence. There are primarily two programs that you can look at. One is the PNP program for the individual. So 4 provinces, for people who are still not aware about the provinces in Atlantic region, you have the New Brunswick, you have the Newfoundland and Labrador, you have the Prince Edward Islands, and you have Nova Scotia. Now, along with these individual PNP programs, these provinces also participate in what is called Atlantic Immigration Program. Now, Atlantic Immigration Program is a federal program managed federally, but it is also available for the provinces, whereby designated employers in these provinces who are designated by the AIP can identify employees and then provide endorsement for them, and based on that they can then apply for PR. So collectively 2 different programs run simultaneously in all these 4 provinces, and therefore they become very, very attractive for candidates across Canada who were otherwise struggling to find any options. Now there is one specific segment of international students who are struggling the most, and they are the ones who have come to Canada after having completed their grade 12. So they completed their grade 12, they completed their high school, and then they've come to Canada to study a 2-year diploma program. This specific student segment are the ones who are impacted the most, and the reason why they're impacted the most is because even if they score the highest possible in their English language exams, even if they have 3 years of Canadian work experience, the fact that there is no formal degree, there is no bachelor's degree, because they've come fresh from high school, there is no foreign work experience, they come to Canada, they get their 2 years of diploma, they get 3 years of work permit, let's say they have 3 years of work experience in Canada. In spite of all of this, they are still not going to be able to meet the express entry high cutoff, and therefore this big segment, and it's a very, very big segment, because these have been the ones who have been lured into believing that if you come to Canada on this 2-year diploma program, obviously you don't need to study a bachelor's degree. After you become a PR, you can then study bachelor's if you wish to, otherwise you don't need to at all. And this segment of international students are probably the most impacted and affected. And this is the reason why you are having these protests. Now, obviously, there is a lot of talk that other provinces, students in other provinces, workers in other provinces will also start something of this sort. But this is meeting with a lot of, this is not getting a lot of support from the public by and large. The media also is not showing it in a good light. Actually, the most recent one that I saw, which is quite worrying, is that, let me just show you this one. This one is being shown on the Indian media, right? And sometimes you wonder how they say these things, but let me just show this to you so you know what I'm saying. Okay, here on your screen right now. Okay, it says, no, it's not big enough. Let's make this large enough. It says, hundreds of Indian students in Canada face deportation, protest against the new rule. First of all, there is no new rule. Okay, and it's not about being deportation. And here it says around 300 students are protesting, okay, and have threatened to go on a hunger strike if the province does not review its latest immigration policy. Now, this is where it looks pretty skewed. First of all, there is no deportation. Nobody is being deported. If your temporary residence expires, then you are a temporary resident, then you are expected to leave the country if you do not have any permanent residence pathway. So nobody is being deported. So that's the first thing. Secondly, there is no new rule. That is what this particular article says, that there are some new rules. Review its latest immigration policy. There is no latest immigration policy. Yes, I mean, you could say that any country would do what it needs to do to obviously protect its own citizens and its economies and policies. But there is no new immigration policy or latest immigration policy which restricts people who are already in Canada. The latest immigration policies have to do with restricting, international students or the number of international students, not giving work permits to PPPs, and that also announcements being made in advance. There's something wrong here in this particular article. But again, this is what happens with how the media can portray certain things and create further agitation. Now, can you imagine how many parents and how many people or relatives or friends of these students who are currently in Canada, how worried and how concerned would they be, and how they would then get misinformed, misled, misguided, and they would misread these kind of statements and get further worried, so much anxiety, so much panic. What do you do with that, right? At the end of the day, one thing that you will always have to you'll have to bear that in mind, that the number of temporary residents can never ever equal the available PR quotas. The PR quotas will always be less. The number of temporary residents is always going to be high. It's common logic. And that number can never be equal. And if that number is equal, then of course everybody gets to become a permanent resident, right? That probably was the case somewhere. I guess no, even then it was not the case. I mean, somewhere back in times, historically, if you were looking at, there was a time when Canada did take about few 100,000 people as permanent residents. Yeah, at that point of time, I don't think there were that many temporary residents. But given the current circumstances, let me rephrase that. Given the current circumstances, the number of temporary residents is always going to be higher. And therefore, Mark Miller is already doing what it needs, what he thinks is best in terms of curtailing or rather reducing the number of temporary residents in Canada. But it's going to take some time. It's going to take some making hard decisions. And what they're doing right now is part of those hard decisions. But I'm not sure about the protests and how that will be seen as, because the immigration minister of Prince Edward Islands has very clearly said that though he sympathizes and empathizes with the condition of the international students and what they're facing right now, he can't do anything about it. And the restrictions that these guys are protesting against will stay. And the restrictions what they're protesting against, or the change of immigration policy, is that Prince Edward Islands has reduced its nomination intake by 25%, and that they have changed that they will be accepting, or rather they will be prioritizing healthcare, trade, childcare occupations, and that they would not be taking in any more applications from food and service industries. Now and this is not happening now. It happened somewhere in the month of February. Obviously, people have been impacted. Obviously, people who moved to Prince Edward Islands thinking that once they go there, they will get a permanent residence option, pathway, PNP option or pathway. Well, those are the ones who are now feeling quite, I wouldn't say cheated, but they're feeling like they are getting the raw end of this bargain. Overall, it is troublesome, but then the permanent resident pathways are getting more difficult. And I will show you how in my next slide. Where is my next slide? Okay, so main subject for today's discussion is this. Where is the slide? No, it's not there. Yeah, it's here. PNP restrictions and program pause. That is what the main subject for today's video was, that PNPs are really I wouldn't say shutting down, but you are seeing a lot of restrictions. You are seeing a lot of programs being paused, a lot of programs primarily closing doors. Prince Edward Islands, as I've been talking to you about that, so let's start with that one. They have reduced their intake by 25%, and they have restricted sales and service sectors, and they will now prioritize healthcare, trades, and childcare, these occupations, for the remainder of the year for the remaining PNP intake. So that's the Prince Edward Islands. New Brunswick, it was announced yesterday. They will be pausing their invitations to apply. So what was happening in New Brunswick is that if you have completed your education in New Brunswick, you could apply through the student connection stream. If you were working in New Brunswick and you had a job offer from your employer, then you could apply under the employer connection stream. All you had to do was create your expression of interest. The province would send you an invitation. Of course, you had to be eligible in Express Entry as well. That is how easy it was. So obviously, a lot of people are going to be very upset with New Brunswick as well, because, hey, overnight they changed this because they will no longer be accepting, or rather they are accepting the expressions of interest. They are not saying don't apply. They're not saying don't create your expressions of interest. It's just that they will not be sending out any invitations effective 17th of May, which was yesterday. Yukon has paused their PNP program for 2024. Excuse me. So for the remainder of the year, Yukon is saying, I will not accept any more applications. Why? Their allocation for this year is only 483 nominees. They have more than 600 applications. They received already, I think, about a month or so back, and they are continuing to get more applications. So they've raised their hands up and they said, we have processed so far only 100 applications, 107, I think, and we just cannot accept any more. So for the whole remainder of this year, for 2024, they have paused. They are not accepting any more applications. So if you are thinking of going to Yukon, well, tough luck. It's not going to happen. Nova Scotia, earlier this year, they temporarily paused accepting applications from food and accommodation industry occupations. So if you were thinking that you would go to Nova Scotia, because a lot of people were saying, a lot of people were making these kind of videos as well, right? That's how more people were encouraged to go there. That go to Nova Scotia, get your first paycheck, have the employer support you, sign the NSNP 200 form for you, and apply under the skilled worker. Like this, you will get through with the PNP, etc., etc. Obviously, a lot of people were encouraged. They made that change. They made that move. They went to Nova Scotia. Unfortunately, Nova Scotia stopped accepting those program streams because obviously, you can imagine there are so many candidates who apply through these streams because these streams are so popular. Whether we like it or not, the number of people who work in this segment or this sector of the industry, the food services, the retail services, the accommodation services, it's a very large number of international students and the postgraduate work permit holders who are working in this sector. And because of the sheer number of applicants who are applying through this sector, I guess Nova Scotia had to at some point of time put their feet down and say, okay, we can't take this anymore. So that was Nova Scotia, which temporarily paused it. British Columbia, though there is no pause or there are no changes for this year, but they have already announced changes to its international graduate and international postgraduate stream. Now, in the current process, the international postgraduate applicants from 7 different fields of education from designated universities in British Columbia, the minute they complete their masters, they are eligible to apply for nomination directly. No scoring, nothing, apply for nomination, right? British Columbia has now said that starting January 2025, which basically means even if you're a student who's studying right now for your master's degree in British Columbia, you will be impacted. Starting January 2025, you will now need to obtain a job offer which is valid for at least 1 year. Okay, and only then you will be eligible to apply under the postgraduate stream. For the international graduate stream, you need a job offer for an indeterminate period. Only then you will be able to apply under the international graduate stream. So changes happening there from British Columbia. Ontario is apparently Ontario is the only one which is pretty all right. They've been pretty cool so far. Their nomination allocations, everybody else pretty much stayed the same. Ontario's nomination allocation went up by 5,000 nominations. Okay, I'm not sure what happened there, what they did, and what they were looking to do, but they went up with their nomination quotas, nomination allocation, which is pretty cool. So far, nothing from Ontario. Ontario has been going great guns. They have been conducting their draws pretty regularly. I mean, I know a lot of you are expecting and anticipating the draw to happen every few weeks, every month. Why is there no tech draw? Why is there no healthcare draw? Why is there no master's draw? You guys need to keep into consideration. You should take it into consideration that Ontario has a lot of streams, and they obviously need to balance out who they are allotting, who they are assigning, who they are inviting under which specific stream. So, don't expect that the stream that you are interested in is going to happen with a lot of regularity. It doesn't work like that. So yeah, if you're eligible, just have patience. At some point of time, Ontario will start conducting their draws. I mean, they're already conducting their draws. Your turn will be up next soon. Saskatchewan has updated their excluded occupation list. Now the list is too big, and I really couldn't make out how many of them were excluded, but you can take a look. For all you know, your NOC code hopefully is not there, but yeah, just take a look anyways. But Saskatchewan hasn't been conducting too many draws, right? You haven't seen too many draws. You know why that has not been happening? What Saskatchewan has been doing is very coyly, very candidly, people who have been applying for jobs in Saskatchewan, mainly through Sask Jobs, SASK jobs.com. So if you were applying through the portal, through the PNP portal's employment page, Saskatchewan has been very candidly shortlisting candidates in those from those people, and then they have been sending them invitation notices, and they have been invitation notices. They've been sending them interview notices, interview invitations, and then they have been interviewing those people virtually. And if these candidates meet their conditions and requirements of education and work experience, then those candidates are getting invited directly. So there are no draws happening. On the contrary, they have decided, because you see, this is what happens. When we identify a program, people start figuring out loopholes, workarounds of ways to, and I hate to say these words, but to cheat the system or to game the system. People do it all the time, right? And provinces learn, provinces understand, the officers understand, and then they get stricter and stricter. Saskatchewan over the years is now one of the most strictest provinces when it comes to adjudicating their applications or assessing their applications. Okay, and then they have figured out, in spite of all that, people tend to do what they have to do, and they have now figured out a different way of doing it. So now they are shortlisting people, and then they're identifying these people based on their market demands, based on their labor market priorities, and they're interviewing them. Only once they are satisfied during their interviews, after having validated their education and work experience, they are then inviting them. This is mainly healthcare so far. We have seen a bit other jobs as well. A couple of our candidates were invited as well. So we know from them what exactly is going on and how it has been happening. So that's Saskatchewan for you. They have not been conducting the regular draws that they were doing earlier, that we were conducting earlier. You have seen a sporadic here and there kind of a draw, nothing regular from them. Alberta, earlier this year, they created a big uproar when they paused their Alberta Opportunity Stream. Now, very, very popular stream. People would get their LMIAs, work there for some time, and then apply under the Alberta Opportunity Stream. Or students who were completing their education in Alberta and then continuing their work experience in Alberta. This was a favorite program because, again, no scoring, nothing. You are eligible, you apply. And then Alberta realized they have more than 5,000 applications in process, in the queue. And they just couldn't keep up with the processing queue, and it was just getting overwhelming. So they put a pause on the Alberta Opportunity Stream. It is understood that whenever they will reopen the stream, there might be some changes to the criteria. It might go, I don't know. It might go the scoring factor way. And because, how else do you create it? How else do you make it fair for everybody around you? So that's with Alberta. Now, what Alberta also did, and again, this is again keeping into consideration how programs are abused and people try to game the systems. Well, they also introduced the employer criterias, which earlier were not there. Now the employer had to follow a criteria if they were going to, whether they were providing a job offer. So basically, if you were applying under the tech pathway and you had an employer, now you needed some additional documents. You had to have them fill up a form. The employer has to basically have $400,000 as their annual income. They have to be in business for 2 to 3 years. I think it's about 2 years. I don't remember. I think 2 or 3 years. They have to have certain number of employees. They have to have physical office, etc., etc. So more criterias came into play. This is what happens when people game the system one too many times. Then you see more criterias and conditions. But whenever the Alberta Opportunity Stream reopens, I guess the employer criteria will also apply at that point of time. But as of right now, the employer conditions are applicable to everybody who is applying to Alberta. So as you can see, Prince Edward Islands, New Brunswick, Yukon, Nova Scotia, British Columbia, Ontario, no, nothing to do with Ontario. All they did was add an applicant consent form, and the employer form was changed a bit, made it slightly easier. Saskatchewan and then Alberta. We haven't heard anything from Manitoba, but the Manitoba draws are so high that I don't know what to say there. British Columbia, again, the draws are so high because the number of invitations have been reduced, and they have started segregating more categories within their draws, right? The childcare, the healthcare, the construction. So you're seeing more draws in that aspect. Manitoba, there is nothing different so far. Everything remains the same, but the draws, the scores have really gone up. Other than that, the only other province that still hasn't done anything or hasn't changed anything, and that is Newfoundland and Labrador. I hope I've not missed something there. I didn't see anything on the Newfoundland and Labrador website, and I hope I don't jinx it, but that's the only other province that we haven't seen much from. But these are the restrictions and the program pauses that is happening across different provinces, making it more and more difficult in terms of the PR options and pathways, if that's what you're looking at. That's what I have for you for this week. By all means, do connect with us on social media platforms. As I said, we're all there: Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, X. Of course, we're there on X. And if you wish to connect with us, of course, then please do follow us on Instagram. We are there, of course. We keep posting a lot of videos, a lot of content coming up there, and it's pretty informative, I must say that. That's what we believe in, value creation. So if you are on Instagram, please follow us on Instagram. Obviously, don't forget to subscribe to this channel. This is where you get the most credible, authentic, transparent, and up-to-date information to do with Canadian immigration. If you wish to book an appointment to discuss your questions, your queries, your case, of course, we are full-fledged immigration company, so we do provide those services. So yeah, by all means, that's the link. By all means, yeah, book an appointment. We're very happy to talk to you one-on-one as to what's happening with your application. And if you need any services, by all means, this is the link, support@askkubeir.com. Drop us an email and we'll be happy to help you out there. Okay, let's see. Questions. Now, I have about 20 minutes, I think, before I need to rush out. I'm currently in Dubai, in our new office, which we have set up in Dubai. Very happy to be here. This is going all guns blazing already. Thank you, everybody who's out there, who trusted us, who's supporting us in our operations in Dubai. So many of you have already signed up for services. Love it. Thank you for your confidence. Thank you for the trust that you have shown in us. And hopefully we keep doing all this good work, right? And if you still haven't, if you are in Dubai, if you haven't visited us, if you haven't called us, then please do. We are in 1 Central, level 3. By all means, give us a shout if you're here. Of course, you can find out information about our offices online as well, on Google as well. Yeah, of course, getting to the questions. As I said, have for 20 minutes because I need to rush. I'm taking my flight back home tomorrow, back in Canada tomorrow. So have to do some last minute chores. Wifey is always sending you those lists. But let's do the questions first. Prashant says, my postgraduate work permit will expire in 6 months. Does IRCC accept Duolingo test results for my spouse to apply for study permit inside Canada? If you're applying from inside Canada, yeah, you can provide your Duolingo test because this is not SDS. You will be applying through, so it doesn't really matter as long as you are able to establish that you will be able to study and you have the language skills to be able to complete your studies in an acceptable manner. Yes, it's absolutely fine. There is no problem. Harsh says, I have 2 years of experience in India. Job title is vague, but have job duties accurate to NOC 11103. Is it an issue? Job title sounds tier 4 kind. So once again, and I've said this so many times if you're watching my videos or if you know what we do, that your NOC code is always matched to your job roles and responsibilities and not to your job title. For example, you could be a vice president on your job title, but if your job roles and responsibility matches with the job title, a job description of an administrative assistant, then your NOC code would that be of an administrative assistant. Similarly, you could be a general manager, but if your job description matches that of a retail supervisor, then your NOC code would be that of a retail supervisor. So this is what you need to understand. It's not your job title, it's your job duties and responsibilities, it's your job description that matters, and that's how you will identify and determine what your NOC code is. My postgraduate work permit will expire soon. How many months can I stay in Canada on implied status? At end of implied status, can I apply for a visitor record? Well, you are on implied status, which basically means you have legal, valid, maintained status, which means you can stay in Canada for as long as your application is in process. Once your application has been decided upon, in your case, if you're at an implied status, your postgraduate work permit is expiring soon, means you're probably looking to make a fake extension, apply for a fake extension. And in that case, once you get your refusal, you primarily are out of status at that point of time. You will then have 90 days to apply for restoration of status. In that restoration of status application, you can also apply for a visitor record, and that's how you can then continue being in Canada. But keep in mind, until your visitor record is approved, you will continue to be out of status. Just because you've applied for restoration of status does not give you status. So just be aware of that. But yes, you can apply for a visitor record after that, along with the restoration application. Got an invite through OINP International Students job offer stream in March, working in KWC region remotely and on-field sales, but main office in GTA. Employer wrote an additional letter to clarify my region. Is that okay? Well, primarily the way your region is identified is which office do you report to. That is how they identify the region. Now, if you have a different office, a different branch, or a different segment geographically where you primarily report to, then Ontario may consider it, depending on how your employer has written and explained it. But primarily, the way the geography is identified is where your physical office is located, where you're supposed to report to. And that's how they go about it. Okay. Is filed non-EE compared to past INELI EE? I just can't make out what it says. Sorry. Got 2-year work permit for 2-year course after flag polling, which is expiring in October 24. Passport is not expiring in another 5 years. I want to apply for 3-year reconsideration. Should I do it now or in October? Well, you could do it now. You could apply for it now, because then you will know well in advance if you're getting an extension or not. But yeah, absolutely, technically, you can apply for it. Request for reconsideration. We have seen a fair success in such cases. They have been considerate, provided you're able to explain exactly what went wrong. Why were you not given a 3-year work permit in the first place? But yes, you can certainly apply for it now itself, so that you know in advance what's happening there. Studied in India, did a job full-time in India at the same point of time. Can I claim points in Express Entry for the experience and study as duration overlaps? Now I'm on work permit in Canada. So IRCC has been very clear, and they have said it very clearly on their website, so you can absolutely check that work experience gained while studying in Canada cannot be claimed for Express Entry points, for CRS points. But studying and working, so working while you are studying outside Canada, can absolutely be claimed for points in Express Entry for CRS. So yes, you can claim points for your education, and you can claim points for your work experience outside Canada. There is no problem with it. Have done it, have seen it, absolutely works, no problem there. Ashanti says, planning to go to India and have 6 months of experience in pharmacy to be considered under category-based roles, but I'm from finance background. Can I do that? Well, you tell me, can you do that? Being from a finance background, can you really work in pharmacy? Okay. Now, I know you're talking about pharmacy assistant role, and yes, there could be a possibility of doing that, but you cannot just start working as a pharmacy assistant. You have to have some sort of training, some sort of background, some sort of certification. So just make sure that you build that in while you're working. Otherwise, yes, it is going to be a bit of a concern. It can raise a flag as to how come you not having anything to do with pharmacy and suddenly you have 6 months of work experience in being a pharmacy assistant. So please make sure you provide ample of explanation as to how you got in there and how did you start working there. But technically, yeah, you could potentially, yes. Oh, I've lost the questions here. Sorry about that. Shreyansh did 2-year online MBA while working from home. Best results as masters. Claim points for both in e-profile. Is there any issue because of time overlap? What to fill in city where both happened? Hometown. Absolutely, just explained it. If you are studying and you are working outside Canada, it can absolutely be counted for your work experience points and your study points. Both are fine. As far as what to fill in study, wherever you were physically located, whatever was your physical location, that is what you will mention in your city. And yeah, that's where you'll mention about where you were studying or where you were working. Can I show any experience in Express Entry not in sequence, as I have proper jobs documents for these jobs? Yes, of course, you can show first 2 years, last 2 years. That's not a problem. As long as you're able to provide them with proper documentation to establish your work experience, there is no problem with that. I completed 1 year certificate program and next pro start in September. My husband applied for spouse open work permit, child visitor visa. In January, visa refused. Any chances for reconsideration? Okay, so this has been happening a lot. International students who are completing 1 year, 2 year program, when they have applied for their spouse's open work permit, even if those work permits were applied in November, December, January, much before the new announcements came, most of those applications are being refused. And one of the most common reasons for refusal has been financial reasons. So if you did not provide ample financial documentation in your application, even if you apply for reconsideration, the chances of that are not very high to be reconsidered. But if you did provide complete documentation, if you did provide good documentation, then you have an option, of course, reconsideration. But the timing for reconsideration right now is stretching to 4 to 5 months right now. Second option is to apply for or to go for a judicial review, for which you will need a lawyer. But apart from that, that's basically what you can do. I am on implied status. Do I need to update an EE profile? No, there is nothing to update an EE profile for your implied status. I am on a study permit and working 20 hours for my employer, and he is giving me LMIA. File for LMIA, will that impact anything? No, that does not impact anything. I will file work permit after my studies, also eligible for postgraduate work permit. So what is the question here? File for LMIA, will that impact anything? No, it will not impact anything at all. No issues here. My postgraduate work permit is about to expire in 2 months. My PR application is in progress. If I receive ECO PR before my postgraduate work permit expire, will I still need to apply for Bridge Open Work Permit? No, of course not, because the minute you get your ECO PR, guess what? You will be a permanent resident. Once you are a permanent resident, none of your temporary residents are of any relevance. You know what? Congratulations in advance. But yeah, absolutely not to worry. Nothing to do once you get your ECO PR. Just go have a party. Can I go with EE with non-accompanying spouse? She has a spouse open work permit. Yes, technically, yes, you could submit your application with spouse as non-accompanying. Right now, I'm working as a surveyor, which is in a STEM category, but I don't have the Ontario license. My score is 510. If I get selected in STEM category, do I have to submit the license? If you are working as a surveyor in Ontario and that position requires a license, it's a problem. Then why don't you have a license? Because if you're working as a surveyor in Ontario and Ontario needs a license, then there's something wrong either with the question or with my understanding, or yeah, if you're working as a surveyor, you certainly need a license. And if you need a license, why don't you have it? But technically, if that work experience is from outside Canada, you don't really need the license in Ontario if that work experience was outside Canada. Title is payroll specialist, but my duties are payroll systems called system specialist. Is it okay to change the title in my application? Yes, you can change the title. Keep it consistent with the employment documents that you will receive from your employer. No problem. Came to Canada on a visitor, now on work permit, initially for 4 months until got work permit, was working for India employer virtually. Does that experience count in express entry? IRCC has been very clear. If you are in Canada, then the work experience outside Canada cannot be considered as a foreign work experience, if that is what you are asking. Foreign work experience is classified as work experience outside Canada. Now, I know there are a lot of social media posts that are doing the rounds where IRCC, through some social media interaction, has said that you may consider it. But then they also say that any information exchange on social media cannot be considered as legal advice, and you should not follow it. So they say both things. But the law is very clear, and it is mentioned in section 25 in ministerial instructions that govern express entry, that work experience outside Canada is what is referred to as foreign work experience. Malini says, wife is student BC, myself, I really can't understand what you're saying. Wife in student BC, myself in small town, Dauphin, okay, file in Manitoba, work permit expiring 24. Should I go with spouse open work permit, or my work permit will extend with new rule? I don't know whose work permit will extend with new rule or not. All they have said is that they will extend 6,700 people. The more details are supposed to come through later this year. So until those details come through, I would make sure I'm covered. I do not know who will be covered. I do not know who will not be covered. So you'll have to wait for those details to come through. My work permit extension has been rejected. I am short on experience 15 days. Can I still claim for CEC points, or I have no chance? You can claim. It's technical, right? I mean, because you do not have status, therefore you cannot. If I was in your place, I would still take a chance. Probably get a letter from the employer saying that they are willing to pay you for the remaining 2 weeks and count it as paid leave. It might just work. I mean, if I was in your place, I would take a chance with this. I mean, what is there to lose, right? At most, an application being refused. It's not that you're lying. If it's not that you are going to get banned or something. Nothing of that sort is going to happen. So there is no negative implication. But if you really need those 15 days, then I probably would go that way. Any chances for OINP tech draw falling back to 468? I can't say. There is no way to say that because it will all depend on the number of invitations. So yeah, at this point of time, it's very difficult to say it will go to 468 or not. I have received my COPR. I will be sending my passport. However, my current passport is only valid till Feb 2025. If I renew my passport before flying, is there something I need to do? No, you don't need to do anything. You will get your PR visa that will be stamped in your passport. It will be valid until February 2025 or the medical expiry, whichever is sooner or earlier. And if you renew your passport before flying, that's it. Go with both your passports, clip it together and carry both your passports and nothing to do. Absolutely fine. No issues there. I got a job offer in rural city in Alberta. Can I move there and apply through rural renewal stream, or do I have to wait for a year before applying? You need 1 year of work experience, my friend. And also please check if that rural community has been included in the Alberta rural stream. Okay, they keep updating their list. I mean, actually, to be very honest, I forget how many communities are there, but make sure you check that list before you apply. Can we do college certificate after postgraduate certificate as the second course, as no trade skill course is available as post-graduation certificate? Will that be a problem in study permit extension? No, it is not a problem. You can choose to do any kind of a program before and after any program that you have done. That's not a problem at all. You will hopefully get an extension of your study permit. I mean, at least it's not a problem. If you're already on a study permit, you're choosing to do 1 more year of program, regardless of what level of credential that is, it's absolutely acceptable. My work permit expires in October. CRS is 509. Should I apply for work permit extension? What are my options for PR? I can't tell you what your options for PR is. That is something which you will need to check in detail individually through different PNP programs. You will check your scores. You will check your NOC codes. As far as work permit is expiring is concerned, there is no provision for extensions of work permit at this point of time. Did diploma of 3 years after 10th and BTech 3 years. West equivalency, I got 4-year bachelor's. If I West diploma will boost points under 2 or more degrees, or just second. I honestly, I don't understand the question that you're asking me. But if you have 2 different credentials, then please ensure both of them have an ECA. And if the ECA comes as 2 different programs, then you may, depending on what the equivalency is, you may be able to claim points for them collectively and get points for 2 or more degrees. Does currently non-EEPR application filed get affected by ineligible EE profile created earlier for score testing? Shows ineligible since start. Okay, so what you're asking me is that you created an Express Entry profile, it became ineligible. Will that impact your non-EEPR application? The answer is no, it will not impact. Your Express Entry profile does not have any impact on any of your other applications, no matter which ones those are. And in this case, your non-Express Entry PR application will have no problem at all. Applied visitor before work permit expire. Am I on applied status? Can I extend visitor if I get ITA later on? Don't want to be out of status. If you applied for a visitor record before your work permit expired, then yes, you will be on implied status or maintained status. There's no problem with that. And can you apply to extend your visitor record? Yes, you can. That's also not a problem. Did VES for IRCC recipients in 2023? Now we have to order VES for Ontario. Both reports have different dates and valid. Which report to submit where? Well, submit your most recent and most latest VES report to both, to Ontario as far as IRCC is concerned. That is not a problem. I have completed my master's, eligible for Ontario's master's stream, and moved to Manitoba for work in January. Should I return to Ontario or stay for Manitoba PNP? Well, the point is, whenever you're applying for a PNP program, you are expressing your intention to live in that province. So at this point of time, you might be out of the, actually, no, you cannot be out of the province. If you're applying for the Ontario master's stream, then you should come back to Ontario, work in Ontario, and then apply for the master's stream. Or you can be outside Canada, that's fine. But if you are in Canada, then you must be in Ontario. Docs required if birth certificate is not available. Well, first of all, get a not found certificate or not available certificate from the municipality. Then provide your 10th certificate, 12th certificate, detailed explanation, PAN card, Aadhaar card, ITRs, any other place that shows your birth date. You can also get a letter from the embassy, which is a confirmation of birth date, and you can also get a letter from the gazetted officer. Nothing there. Last question. Thank you so much, guys, for bearing with me. In my EE profile, I wrote first name as family name and family name in the first name. Post ITA when submitting it, I corrected it. Do I need to submit a web form, as I didn't mention it, and I didn't mention in LOE? No, not really. If you are so concerned about it, then by all means, you can raise a web form and let them know. But it's not a problem as long as your name matches with your passport. Last name, first name matches with your passport. It's not going to be an issue. Don't worry about it. Guys, thank you so much for joining in. It is really nice connecting with you again. Next stream, we'll be broadcasting it again from Canada, back home, flying in tomorrow there. And hopefully everything falls back into normal. Can't wait to get there. I hear spring is all gone and it's all nice and summery, getting to be there nice and summery. So looking forward to that. Thank you so much for joining in. It was a pleasure, and I shall see you again soon.